part 1 of our 27-day journey around Sri Lanka. In part 1 we will be visiting Negombo, Wilpattu, Anuradhapura and finishing in Trincomalee. We flew from the Gold Coast to Australia via Jetstar to Sydney, where we picked up a direct flight to Colombo, Sri Lanka via Sri Lanka Airways. We arrived late at night, but getting through customs was easy. Once through, we changed up some Australian dollars into Sri Lankan rupees and picked up a SIM card. We had pre-arranged a taxi with our accommodation as we knew we were getting in late and wanted a stress-free start to the holiday. Nearly all of our accommodation was booked via booking.com, as well as checking Google reviews. We tried to keep our budget for around $50 AUD per night and always looked at good ratings, aircon and positive comments. On first inspections, we were really impressed with our first hotel in Negombo. It was exactly what we'd expected. Everything was clean and tidy, and we were ready for a good night's sleep before a full day ahead of us. Getting a tuk-tuk had to be one of our favourite ways of getting around. They're so much fun. You get a real sense of the area, and there's just enough breeze to stay cool while they whiz around the local streets. We used a Pick-Me app to book tuk-tuks, but paid cash at the end. They aren't as cheap as buses, but they are very quick and still an affordable way to get around. Most 5 to 10 minute trips were around 250 to 300 rupees, which is around $1.50 AUD. Have small notes on you if you want to pay by cash, as they rarely seem to have change. The first place we wanted to visit was the fish markets. Negombo is a famous fishing port in Sri Lanka. It has a rich history and has been a fishing port for centuries. The Negombo Lagoon made it the perfect place for boats to come in and shelter and create the port. We wanted to visit the two types of fish market. There's the dry fish market and the wet fish market. Negombo is hot all year round, and we were travelling around September and it was getting up to 35 degrees in the day. The tuk-tuk dropped us around the dry fish market. We would definitely recommend a visit here as it's so different to anything we had experienced. The smell and the heat was intense, but it all adds to the experience. The smell was so strong, but by the end of the day, your clothes do smell a lot like the market, so be prepared. As you leave the dry fish area, you enter the fruit and vegetable market. There are so many different varieties and the colours were amazing. You can understand why Sri Lanka is renowned for amazing food when you can see the fresh ingredients they have available. Look out for king coconuts here and make sure you get one, as they are the perfect way to stay hydrated while you're exploring in the heat. We then entered the wet fish market. There was every type of fish you could imagine. Fish were being prepared and sold everywhere we looked. It was a really busy market, but it's definitely worth a visit. After a busy morning at the markets, we took another tuk-tuk to Jude restaurant. It was highly rated on Google and it didn't disappoint. The food was great and the service was excellent. We'd definitely go back. We were lucky enough to have a swimming pool at the hotel we were staying at. In the heat of Negombo, this was an amazing way to cool off. Swimming pools aren't always at the top of our list when booking accommodation, but here it was definitely a plus. We only had 2 nights in Negombo, so we wanted to make the most of it. We decided in the afternoon we'd take a sunset cruise. Our hotel organised this for us. A local takes you out on a boat through the canals and into the Negombo Lagoon. You then stop to enjoy a fruit platter as the sun set. On the way back, we stopped at an island that had monkeys on it and they come right up to the boat. Day 2 in Negombo, and we got up early to try and see the fishermen coming in to deliver the fish to the market, but it turned out we weren't early enough. They normally come in around 4 AM and it was about 7 AM. We did, however, get to see the dry fish being laid out, which is how they get dried in the sun. A local told us these fish would be sold all over the world, particularly China. In this area, people will approach you to try and sell you tours of the market. This wasn't something we wanted to do as we only had a short amount of time there, so we moved on. Next, we wanted to walk to the nearby St Mary's Church. It took around 15 minutes from the fish markets and even though it was 8 AM, it was already getting hot. The church was worth the visit, and even better that there was a wedding taking place, which apparently is a common occurrence in the mornings. A church has stood at this site since 1544, but this church in particular was built around 1874. Now it was time to leave Negombo and travel to Wilpattu. For the rest of our holiday, we'd organised a private driver. The driver is around 3 hours to Wilpattu. We'd pre-booked our accommodation and an all-day safari, which is the main reason people travel to Wilpattu. The accommodation we booked was fairly basic, but the location was incredible. It was right outside the national park gates. It was a family-run hotel and the owners were really friendly. There weren't many places to eat in Wilpattu, so we opted to have all our meals with the accommodation, and they were delicious. The next morning we were up early for our all-day safari. We were so close to the park that we could walk right to the entrance where our jeep was parked. There was a queue of cars waiting to get into the park, but we were lucky enough that our driver had got there even earlier and parked at the front of the queue. Everybody wants to get into the park early as it's the best chance of seeing the animals and not having to wait behind other vehicles and potentially missing them. Wilpattu is renowned as one of the key places you can see leopards, which are really rare across Sri Lanka. It's also known as being one of the more larger rugged parks, so although there can be more wildlife, finding it can be a challenge. Then it was off on our safari. As it was an all-day safari, we had breakfast and lunch provided. The breakfast was so nice and the views from the jeep were even better. After breakfast, we were lucky enough to see the elusive leopard. They tended to be resting up in the trees, so it was difficult to film, or they appeared out of nowhere, and we had to be very quick to see them, let alone catch them on camera. When you do see them, word gets around and all the other jeeps in the park appear. Patience is required while you wait your turn to see what was spotted. Lunch was equally as delicious as breakfast, and the views were just as nice, right by the water. Before we knew it, our safari was over. In all, we saw elephants, leopards, and tons of birds. Next, it was on to Anuradhapura. This location is one of the most ancient and religiously significant parts of Sri Lanka, home to several World Heritage sites. As we drove through the city, our driver asked us if we'd like to see the local tank. This was a bit lost in translation at first. In Sri Lanka, a tank is a reservoir. It was lovely to see the locals enjoying the water on a hot sunny day. Some played football and some just enjoyed a dip. We arrived at our hotel that was called the Amsterdam Tourist Rest. Although the room was small, it was incredibly clean and there was aircon and a comfy bed. The bathroom was also spotless and had everything we needed. The owner was very knowledgeable and told us the city was divided into two sections, a paid area that you required a pass to enter and it was home to many of the World Heritage sites, and a free area that also had sites but mostly required only a donation to enter, and this was not compulsory. We jumped in the car and we were on our way to explore some of the most impressive religious sites we have ever seen. When you're visiting the sites, make sure you're prepared. Men and women are required to have their shoulders and knees covered, and they should remove any hats. Shoes should also be removed. Some Western visitors wore socks, but we weren't sure if this was strictly allowed or not. In the midday heat, the ground can become extremely hot, so take care and look out for some areas where water is available to cool your feet. You can often see this rising up out of the ground along the paths around the sites. If you visit at the weekend, you will see locals dressed in white bringing offerings of food and flowers and lighting incense. This really added to our experience. And although it is busy, everyone is really kind, friendly, and it felt very peaceful. We purchased some flowers for around 150 rupees so we could take part in the traditions. This is something we would never forget, and it became a highlight of our trip. We couldn't have asked for a better start to our trip to Sri Lanka. We had been on adventures and experienced some amazing culture. Now it was time to travel to Trincomalee, a beach town on the northeast coast. As this was September, it was a great time to visit the area for some sun and relaxation. Subscribe and join us for part 2, where our Sri Lanka adventures continue.